From growing up in an orphanage to breaking gender barriers in the corporate world and battling cancer twice, Lynn's own personal journey is the definition of resilience and determination. The roller coaster journey of entrepreneurship requires unwavering resilience, relentless determination, and always stepping outside of your comfort zone. But don't fear not, because on this special episode, I'm so excited to speak to Lynn Swain, a TEDx speaker, trust activator, executive coach, and the CEO behind Symbiota Leadership Institute. She was also a finalist in the 2023 Woman of Stature Award in coaching and mentoring. So yes, I mean, if you're not ready to take your pencils and pens out and start writing, please do so now. Let's hear today from Lynn on how to become brain savvy, making our own brain work for us rather than against us, especially when it comes to selling, negotiating with potential clients, and many other business and startups related issues. Welcome to the Mary Poppins of Startups Live Show. I'm Naili Makambo from Athena Leaders. As a tech consultant and startup advisor, I will answer live the burning questions that you have on your journey to Series A+. Tune in every week for top tips to meet amazing guests, startup founders, investors, and more. More importantly, sit back, relax, and let's welcome Lynn to the stage.
Hello, Naili. Thanks for having me. Hello to your viewers and listeners.
It's such a pleasure to finally have our conversation live, because ever since we've had our prep discussion and I started finding out more about you, and I thought, oh, this is what we need, especially in the world we are currently living and all of the challenges that entrepreneurs are going for. Let's start really looking into brand hacks and the likes. But first, can you tell us a little bit about you and, of course, about Symbiota Leadership Institute?
Right. Well, you gave me such an amazing introduction. I hope that I live up to it all. But so I really do live to help people become resilient. It really is a business to business venture that I have and have had with corporates over the last 27 years. Symbiota Leadership Institute's been going for 10 years now. It was first a conduit for my research that I did on the neuroscience of leadership. And it was 4 years of an MSc, and I thought, let's put this to good work. And so it was born out of that, interestingly. So we do coaching. We offer coaching across all levels within organizations, and then facilitated learning, bringing every time that neuroscience of leadership, the neuroscience of sales, that lens onto the contemporary knowledge. But we find that it really, really sticks when people know why and they know how. Then it's a matter of, okay, well, then we're willing to invest our energy in using this tool or this model, now that we know the hard science behind it.
Yeah, and I think, it's always quite surprising, because when we talk about neuroscience, we're talking about the brain. For me, I find that it's kind of a contrast, because on one hand, it's super fascinating what happens in the backhand in our mind, and we don't even know how we sabotage ourselves as well. And on the other hand, we always forget where we put our keys, or to buy milk when you go to the supermarket, and then it just reminds you afterward. So it's a bit of a contrast. But one thing I'm really kind of excited when we were talking about, and before we really start looking at patterns and some of the work that you do, I wanted to talk about one of the subjects that I think a lot of people are struggling with: distractions, and how do we cope with focus in a world where everything that we do, or everything that we use, even just being on this call, you need to go on the browser. By the time you open your browser, they will want to have a pop-up for one thing or another. So distraction is everywhere. And as entrepreneurs, we need more time we need to focus. And we also have our lives. So how do you help entrepreneurs, or how do you coach those that are struggling to just focus and get things done in a world that is full of distractions?
Focus is paramount, whether it's as an entrepreneur with the typical distractions that we face, social media and so on, and things that we really do set ourselves up to punish ourselves with, right? But for the brain to focus is really, really difficult, even when in a place of adversity, or where we're wondering what the end of the month is going to bring in terms of paying our team and our staff. So we as entrepreneurs are on constant roller coasters, not only with the practical, physical distractions, but all of that we're dealing with on an emotional level as well. And it is really, really difficult and takes so much discipline. But let's just talk about the practical distractions. Where we decide to regulate and take a hard look at ourselves and become a bit more aware of the reasons why we are suffering the way we are, it's critically important that we reframe possibly what we're doing. We're so focused ourselves, so honed in on making, financial targets, etc., that we sometimes lose sight of the how. And to take time out as an entrepreneur is not a waste. Taking time out to just revisit what is causing us pain and distraction, and then to decide on a discipline, and it involves regulating yourself. And I always use 3 regulation techniques that help with practically anything in life, and so it is worthwhile taking time to, in fact, learn regulation techniques. I mentioned the one is reframing. It's like, yeah, social media is going to definitely help my business, and I'm going to make an appointment with myself for that at 4 tomorrow afternoon, right? And to set your notifications, for example. That's a little silly example. But where people are feeling overwhelmed possibly by the distraction of the way the world is today, or what the pandemic did to all of us, and how many of us did really well, but many of us were horribly unearthed, and we had everything completely dashed and smashed. And I often think a good way to reframe that, for example, would be, well, those ruts that I'd created for myself are also now obliterated and non-existent. So am I going to go back to my old habits, or am I going to create a new environment in which we all can thrive in the business?
I love the your view, or the some of the example that you've shared there, because I think they're quite powerful. This idea to reframe your thoughts. You cannot change the present, you cannot change the current moment, but you are in control of the thoughts that will lead you to doing something better for tomorrow, and even to improve the current moment. And as you said, just tweaking that. And I also love the the social media reframing. So rather than being there and feeling like everything is constantly being pushed on you, and you always have that drive to pick up your phone and get even more distracted, you make an appointment with yourself and say, well, I'm going to reframe that. Yes, I do love to go there, but I will go there in a time where it doesn't actually disturb me. So yes, that is brilliant advice, especially when it comes to reframing. And I wish people could, I mean, if you are an entrepreneur really struggling, I think creating that time for self-reflection and reframing is very important. Now, when we start looking at just going deeper in that way of how do we use our brain to work for ourselves, one of the terms that you use a lot is brain savvy. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes. So what we're really saying is we want to look at our world and everything that we do as, or through a lens that is brain friendly. How can we work in a way that makes life easier for ourselves, i.e. with the brain? How can we be aware when we're interacting with others, how we might be falling on them, how our clients might feel when we walk in rather desperate for a sale, right? What is going to be the influence on them? Let me learn a little bit about what the brain, from a social perspective, perceives, what their brain perceives, and what my brain is putting out, and what I'm really suffering internally from as a result of my brain being incredibly hypervigilant to threats. Any threat. A threat might even be that this is the first time I'm going to see this client, and I've been rather intimidated by what I saw on LinkedIn. So brain savvy selling, for example, is taking a look at what the triggers are for ourselves. If we find ourselves consistently feeling anxious about going and consulting with a particular client, especially where the outcome is important to us and we're pretty attached to it, we're needing to have a look at that. That is a social pain that we're allowing ourselves into, right? And it might be one of feeling less than. In other words, we don't recognize ourselves and the greatness that we have within ourselves. It might be one of potential rejection. So, Nelly, I don't know whether you want me to go into this, but it's that, just being aware, firstly, of these threats. What this does to the brain, with even a slight provocation, is it sends it into a fight and flight state. And you can't be engaged in a discussion with a client or engaging them and be in your fight and flight state. You can't be thinking on your feet, coming up with great innovative ideas as you speak, partnering, and in this fight and flight state. In this state, you tend to be irrational. You're seeing the client almost as the foe. It's me versus him or her. It is very much a matter of illogical thinking that takes place. Everything looks like it's going to fail, right? We start generalizing. We become oversensitive. Suddenly his expression puts us right out of the deal as far as we're concerned. And so we start withdrawing and behaving accordingly.
So it's almost like acknowledging where you are, acknowledging that is scary, but at the same time, kind of separating it from you, especially when it comes to decision making. So on one hand, this is the situation I am at. I'm not even going to lie to myself or pretend. And of course, I do believe in positive affirmation, but there's also a space where when you start feeling that fear, as you've mentioned, that threat, you kind of name out or everything that's going around you, and really appreciating and acknowledging that, to have the strength to kind of put it on one side and take the right decision to move forward.
Right. So that really is it. It's actually about taking charge. It's understanding that this is happening, being honest with yourself, and then saying, right, I need to take charge because that's my brain. That's not me. That's my brain misbehaving there, doing its own thing without my mind deciding what it's going to do. And so it's at that point that if we look at some of the drivers, typically, I'd say it could be, and I've mentioned the lack of recognition, a sense of being less than. That uncertainty, is this going to lead to a sale or not? And if I'm feeling pretty desperate about it, it's tough. So I need to turn these things around for myself. If those are my issues, I need to be saying, right, well, what do you bring, Lynn, to this appointment that enables you to stand up and be a partner to your client, i.e., I'm enhancing my sense of status, right? I might say, well, then what is one thing that you can be certain of? So wherever these triggers are, it's like, okay, there goes my brain again, but I know I have something to offer. I know that I am prepared, i.e., I've secured that at least. I know that I have whatever it is that you're selling that is going to add value to their organization. That I know for sure. I also know that I could be triggering him if I go in this anxious state. But this is the motivation behind saying, right, I'm taking charge, and just reframe each thing that you feel is triggering you. So other areas are empowerment. If you feel disempowered, well, your client could actually be feeling disempowered as you walk in. So often feeling as though they're being pushed into a corner. And on your side, you decide what you do have and how you can deal with the fallout, possibly, of this appointment not working out. What it could be. It'll turn into what? Another learning experience or a fun story at your dinner party. And it's that. And we often go in with a sense of acceptance. We're so afraid of rejection, and being able to say, right, I would rather be respected than liked, or it's this way of thinking that can really help put us into an engaged state in which we walk
Yeah.
in calmly.
And one thing, as you're talking about the reframing there, one thing that I like, as you said, you first not disassociation, but first kind of really looking at the fear and understanding what scares you, going step by step, and then you reframe it into something positive. You are might still be scared, but at least if you've done your research, you understand your clients, you understand their objections, you know how you're going to counter out the objection when you are on that sales call or when you are speaking to them if you want to sell your prototype or a pilot. But then you bring in that, as you've mentioned, you prepare yourself mentally, not just in terms of the discussion, but yourself by doing the reframing. And as you've mentioned, I love the example you mentioned about, I'm just going there to have a good discussion, or I'm going there to learn from the client. And that's something I also try to encourage other people when I just tell them, well, go on that call, and if it doesn't work, learn their objections. So that's when you go on the next call with another potential client or talking about your idea, then you know what objection you're going to get, and you can reuse that. And in fact, one thing that I do for myself, and I know it sounds very silly, but I've been running my business for about 4 years now, and before that, I've always been kind of an entrepreneur, whether it was for the community and run so many other projects. And especially when you run your own business, and I mean, it's amazing what you have to learn from scratch, from sales and marketing, which to me, especially marketing, feels like a black heart when I first started, to absolutely different areas of my life. So I'm not even going to lie when I say that I have stopped counting, or maybe one day I should count the number of times, days per year that I spend in a dark room because I just don't have the energy to go out and face situations. And then when you finally go out, you get sucker punched, a deal that you wanted to force through, or COVID happens,
Yes.
or so many other things. And I got to the point, especially this year, where it started when I had some kind of potential partnership that fell through, and I was thinking,
Mm.
not again. It's okay. Now I need to think about what I'm going to do. And some certain things are still moving really well. Let's keep with that. And where do I go next? And then I thought, do you know what? Without all of the negative that's happening to me and the challenges, I won't actually have an interesting story to write in my biography.
Yes. I
That
love it.
became
I love it. There
Norris.
we go.
Yeah,
Go Nelly.
every time
Yes.
I really, and I have no intention of even writing about my life or my biography, but I know people do that. Eventually, someone will write about you, or I will
Yeah.
eventually, I might, why not, write my autobiography. So I always sit down and I'm like, if everything goes well, that would be boring to read, right?
Absolutely wonderful. Yes. Yes. That's a great example. Yeah, so it gets us through those days, gets us up, gets us out, and that sense of purpose that I know most entrepreneurs really do specialize in, right? Helps to drive us forward, and that in itself is such a stabilizing force when it comes to our brains, because it provides a sense of certainty, i.e., you know what? My resilience curve might look like this right now, but I have I have a purpose, I have a plan, and I am moving in that direction. That in itself often helps us from falling into dysfunctional coping mechanisms. Just that certainty, but it's not only certainty. When you have your own sense of purpose, it's kind of a fairness issue as well. There goes that trigger that normally unearths many of us. I am countering unfairness in my life. I've chosen that purpose. That means autonomy. That means empowerment. I'm empowering myself. It meets all of the 5 triggers that I've actually mentioned today, um, in every way. And so purpose is so critically important. What I feel is something very special I'd like to share, and that is around trust, and how we're all desperately wanting to build an organization, companies that exude trust, build trust internally as well with our people, and something that we can accelerate when we are with the clients. So is that something that you'd like to chat a bit about, Nelly?
Yes, I was actually going to ask you about that as well, because one of the things that I see a lot, see, as the world has changed and evolved, we are connected, yet in a disconnected world. And at the same time, as an organization or startups or even entrepreneurs, we're thinking more about how do we establish ourselves globally. And many companies, when you go on their website, it's all about how trusting they are, how they support their teams, how they empower and make space for resiliency, for identity, and the rest. Whereas, when you start working with them or go behind behind the closed door is another story. So how can what are your views on trust, especially in this landscape where we are going to continue being more remote and hybrid, and we need to be connected despite the space between us?
Yeah, it is critically important and very, very difficult for small organizations as they grow in a frantic state with the entrepreneur, really, as you were describing earlier, doing everything, being head marketer, being CEO, being the person running around getting the coffee kind of thing. So it is critical and difficult to focus. We've mentioned that. It is difficult to build trust while you're at it and not snap. So what I really wanted to draw to our attention, if we didn't already know it, was that where you have, this is motivation to build an organization from scratch with trust in mind. Organizations in the Fortune 500 was a 2014 survey that they did, the best place to work, right? Great place to work. They found in that particular survey, once they'd analyzed why it had come back this way, was that the organizations that had a high trust culture, internal and external, were also 288% ahead of their closest competitor in terms of return to shareholder. 288% ahead of their
Wow.
closest. Yes. And they were in the top 100 of companies to work for. So, trust truly, you often hear trust is currency. No, trust is truly, literally currency. And I want to just really encourage people to be able to move from this particular standpoint where we've been saying is, we don't really have time even to self-reflect. We need to take the time to focus. We need to take the time to decide where we're going. And on the trust side, bearing in mind everything we've chatted about today, I just feel the fit is so special here for us. Because
Yeah, and
yes, maybe. Carry on.
but one thing as well, because I see, you said that the trust is pretty much you can put some kind of monetary value to that. Yet in organization, because you cannot see trust, you feel the impact of trust. It's difficult for leaders to, especially when things are burning or things need to move quickly. It's difficult to start appreciating the impact of lack of trust because you can't see it, so you can't
Yes.
put that in your KPI, or you can't kind of put some value into that. Now, when we start looking at trust and the connection with others, as you've described, and we also know that to build trust, we really need to get into the brain and the mind of others to kind of connect. What are some
Yes.
of the tips that you have for individuals or leaders to really kind of start using their own brain savvy to really
Mm,
start building that trust in their teams and, of course, their organization?
that's right. So whether we're talking teams or organizations or clients out there, there's something that is little known but critically important. And that is when I decide to trust you. Okay, so Nelly, we've known each other, but even had I not, and before our first meeting, because now it's become habit for me, I decide what I can trust the other person for. And I'm not trusting them for the world. I don't know them. So same thing with my team. When someone new comes on board, I've trusted them enough to start this particular position and this role. And we'll see in 3 months' time what I can trust them for then and what I can trust them for then. So when I decide to trust someone willingly, not only does a hormone that undergirds trust and empathy and moral behavior rise in my bloodstream, but also the person who's on the receiving end of me, if your brain can read mine, i.e. not on a telephone necessarily. It would need to be you in front of me. Your brain perceives that I am, without even using the word trust, trusting you for something sincere. And in that moment, oxytocin, the hormone of love, labor, birth, sex, hugs, moral behavior, as well as empathy and trust spikes in your bloodstream too. So with our teams, it's very important that we decide not to walk around as, we possibly once were. And I was in corporate for many years, so I understand all of this. My people need to really earn my trust. I have very high standards. And these poor people have no idea what they're really aiming at. All they know is that you continuously seem disappointed until eventually we give up.
And I see that a lot as well, especially for those who have been leading teams for a while and they probably have been burned, or for those who's been in business for many, many years, they've had challenges with clients that when they get a new client, the immediate thought is to go away from the trust or to say that they have to earn my trust. But as you said, that they're kind of missing into this subconscious connection that happens when you first tell your brain and you first decide to start the relationship with trust. So what kind of advice can you share with people who maybe they don't appreciate the fact that they have a lot of baggage in their head that sabotages the initial interaction that they have with a potential client, with a team member, because they've been birthed in the past?
Yeah. All right. So here, we're really talking about my trust model. Nelly, you don't even know, but you've walked straight into it.
Great. I had a feeling we connected. We built our trust pattern now.
Oh, beautiful. So yes, if you think about the acronym TRUST, TRUST, this is a guideline to being able to move out of that place. So here you are full of baggage. You, though, are wanting the best for your organization. You're wanting to really move the profitability, etc. And so you're needing to think about why and how you're sabotaging yourself, and maybe quite inadvertently, you're allowing yourself to feel possibly like a victim in the situation, and you therefore are coming on possibly as a bully, let's say, with one of your people. And what you need to then say is, like, if this is an important relationship to me that I need to build trust in, right? And it is, if it's someone working for you. Is it worth putting some effort and time into this? Well, yes. Okay. So if actually I'm just feeling trapped and like a victim because of what they're doing, and I know I need to have a courageous conversation with them about it, because after all, I'm leading this organization, you would think, right, what is it that makes me feel like a victim? Right. And what does it mean? If I'm feeling like a victim, it means that I'm feeling I'm less important, I'm less empowered, I'm less accepted. I don't know. Could be anything like that. And then you think, right, so what am I going to do about it? This is. So what am I going to do about it? So it'd be a matter of, how can I reframe the situation? Well, if ever there was a time to stand up and remind myself of what I do well, and how to this point I have led well, I have been able to speak bravely with some of my people, right? I've jumped out of an aeroplane, if that's what you have to say. If I can do that, I can, right, do this. So you're kind of reframing possibly. Then you think, well, do I actually trust myself? And this is such an important question, because when I ask groups of people whether they trust themselves, strangely, I mean, the first time I did this, I really didn't think that people would own up to not trusting themselves. A lot of people do not trust themselves. So do you trust yourself at least to have a discussion with this particular individual without the fear of fallout being that big, something you can't handle? And okay, you might say, actually, yes. If I'm in the throes of it and it's not going well, I'm going to draw myself out and have a look, distance myself, see the situation, and then come back in. You've had so much experience, you can draw on all of that. And yes, you probably can trust yourself to have a conversation. And so there you go. T, threat, right? What threat do I feel? The R for regulate the threat. The U for to trust yourself. Do you trust yourself? And then, this is important. You say, what might the state of the other person be? The other one that I am needing to now have the appointment with, right? And that state of mind might also be a little rocky. They might be feeling threatened too. Maybe they're wondering what this meeting is all about, and whether they're going to feel disempowered in it, not knowing the agenda. And as you truthfully think through that, you elicit empathy, which gets your oxytocin cycle going. So your trust hormone is now spiking, okay? And out of that touch of empathy, you're able to go to the last point, and that is T. Trust them for something small, smaller than you might have before. You trust that in this meeting, they at least are coming in with the outcome being that this organization would thrive, or that you would want to have a conversation that is not going to be detrimental to both parties, right? To something small, trust them for something, but sincerely. And you go in, and your entire countenance is perceived by the other person's brain in such a way that it calms both of you down. So that's the other thing. Oxytocin is also an anxiolytic, so it quells fear, calms the nerves. And out of that, you have the opportunity of having decent conversations. So where we're talking about, virtual teams, very, very difficult trying to lead. You have to lead through trust. But you might just have to revisit what you're trusting them for and be willing to start with something a little less and build it from there.
And the question on the you is also super important when you're leading and you want to trust virtual people within your team that you might not see, especially if your preference is face-to-face or traditional. Because then when you look at the you, is why is it that you are not trusting them? Right? Exactly. Is it your own ability? Do you trust on your own ability to allow or give others the space to manage their own times and without you always being there on their back so that they can still continue to do the best work they can do?
Absolutely. Absolutely. This, of course, is one of the very good reasons why having as many virtual platform chats, not just telephonic, is so important. It's so important to be able to see each other's expressions, read each other's expressions. That helps to settle our brains. If someone needs to deliver a hard message, but the expression and the tone is seen to be fair, they receive it. So yes, and a bit more connection. We have to work harder on our virtual connections under these circumstances.
Yeah. So I've got one question about kind of your journey, because I'm really intrigued to also find out about you as an entrepreneur and how some of the techniques that you've shared with us have actually come in play and help you to kind of go like, yes, I can go through this as well. But before then, we'd love to play a little game that I call quick fire questions. So the first question I have, are you an early bird or a night owl?
A night owl.
That's great. 1 o'clock of your start. Yeah. Yeah. So what are 3 of your favorite tools that you use every day? It could be software, application, apps, whatever.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Zoom that's it. Zoom is my happy place. Yeah. And the minute you said tools, I'm kind of thinking, yeah, I've got them. I'm thinking about my tools for emotional regulation, of course, every day. And really, I'm a big goal setter. So that's how I find my certainty, a lot of the fulfillment, etc. So I do a lot of goal setting, all in line with an ultimate purpose. And my poor old husband was even pulled out on Saturday for a goal setting session. So we sat there for 6 hours while I asked if I could practice on him.
Well, there you go.
I
It
coached him.
helps, and
Yeah.
and you also have to focus your mind.
Yes.
What is one mistake that you've made that other founders, business owners, or entrepreneurs should watch out for?
Yes. So I started and ran a very successful training company previously called the Consultant Powerhouse, an absolute gem. And I was so excited all the way through. Obviously, for a good few years, we ran this business. I had a wonderful co-founder, Vanessa Bluen, and we just threw everything into it. We had offers. People wanted to buy our organization. We said we're having too much fun, and I pushed and pushed. I had 2 small children. I had a marriage. The whole, my life was extremely full, but I was just fueled and fed by my passion for my business. And to such an extent that I overrode a lot of the symptoms that would have led to an earlier diagnosis of cancer. I overrode going to see doctors for regular checkups. I worked through the whole lot. I felt no pain. It also meant that I needed then to take time out to, in fact, be with the girls who I suddenly realized had maybe not had enough of my attention. So my advice is really to be very aware of the balance in our lives. How worth it is this absolutely chronic focus when in fact we might well be missing important signals and cues and signs of imbalance in our lives.
Wow, thanks for sharing. Yes, that's incredible. Take the time to listen to yourself and also perceive what's going on around you. And so the last question that we have, and this one is one of my favorites, and not all guests agree, but let's try it out. What's the best day of your professional life?
Ever.
Yes. Is there such a thing?
Oh, I had a best day. I really recall this. And my then husband and my daughters were about, I think, my daughters were actually about 7 and 8 years old. And I'd been in Cape Town. We were based in Johannesburg, but I was in Cape Town at the time. And I got the news that a large corporate had decided to go with us. This is after 6 months of consulting and negotiating. You know how it goes, and you're presenting to board after board and group after group. Decided to go with us for a huge rollout. It was the biggest. I could never have imagined a bigger rollout in my life. And I'd heard this news while I was in Cape Town telephonically. And when I went back home at the airport, my husband had arrived in with the 2 girls in a beautiful car, absolutely laid out with champagne, the whole performance, and specially hired to collect me. And we were all, celebrating champagne. Just an absolute win after 6 months of perseverance. And it was just so fulfilling and satisfying. And it was a fulfilling project, something that really was going to make a difference. So, yes.
Wow, again, incredible story there. Just trying to imagine a car pulling up and you're thinking, oh yeah, just pulling up
Like
for
a
you,
red
and then you have
carpet.
the whole shebang inside with the champagne.
So wonderful. The whole family was involved.
But then again, after 6 months of hard work, which I'm sure followed even more months of you working in your consultancy, in your business, that is definitely something well deserved. So thank you for sharing that. So, and again, to any of our listeners, if you are building your business and you growing your teams and you identify some issues, especially when it comes to not making progress, and you feel like people need a bit more, bringing a bit more trust and love, and kind of leaders need to think about reframing their thoughts, not just on themselves, but as well to help their teams do the same, then I will highly recommend that you reach out to Lynn, because she, as you can hear from the story, not just from the business and even the personal, her personal journey. Yes, she's been there, done that, and can definitely lead you to the other side. So, what is next for you and for Symbiota Leadership Institute?
Nelly, I am hoping that this new phase of my familiarizing myself with the impact of social media and getting with the program, because I am 61 after all, so is going to open up some new opportunities. I have absolutely committed myself to doing whatever it takes while watching my health, and it started with a TED talk last month, and I stepped up on that stage. I just thought, share what you need to with people, and it actually was all around the oxytocin molecule. And I have this burning desire to be able to move what we have from a place of being the best kept secret out to an international audience. And so I'm really hoping for more speaking opportunities, facilitation, coaching for the business in the UK and Greater Europe. That's my wish and my hope. And I'm so pleased that you've given me this opportunity today to share these things with you. Thank you and your audience.
Well, thank you so much for being here. One of the things that I've always wanted to do with my podcast was to be a platform that shares best kept secrets around the world, especially when it comes to individuals. As I've said and I've joked many times, you get a lot of podcasts that always bring, people who've done exits if you're in the startup world, or serial entrepreneurs that fly in jets or go around the world and everything, which is great. But I think, there is also a space to hear new voices, like new stories. As you were sharing your personal journey is so inspiring. And I thought, I'm not going to miss the opportunity of bringing that up and sharing here. So just before we go, again, as I've said before, if you have any question and you want to continue talking about something that we've talked about, and just finding out more hacks for yourself in terms of becoming more brand savvy, which I absolutely love the term, and building trust, do please reach out to Lynn on social media, LinkedIn, and of course, you can see more information about her on our show notes and article with all of the amazing tips that we've been getting on this episode. And if you have any question, you want to find out more about how to, move forward and leave fear behind and grow your own ideas, your startups, whether it's even innovation in your organization, then feel free to reach out to me. We do run once a month a one-to-one sessions with entrepreneurs out there to kind of help you get unstuck, think about the next strategy for you, for your product, your tech, your teams, or whatever it is. Before we go, I'm not going to miss this opportunity to ask Lynn for one last parting advice for entrepreneurs out there that might be a bit burnt out, but they still have that passion, that purpose is the word that you've used earlier on the episode, Lynn. They still have that, but they're thinking, all I can see is fog, and I'm not sure how to navigate the fog.
Yes, I can resonate with that. And there's a couple of things that come to mind. The first is to truly give yourself some time off. Just really need to have a look at the value of the time off versus the loss that you might suffer going forward in this position. Because when you're in that state, it's really, really hard to set goals that everything just feels like too much of a stretch, right? So I would, at this point, if I was there, I would probably find myself an executive coach and allow myself to lie in the hammock that, in my case, I had a he, that he held. He held a hammock, basically, a mental hammock, for me to be able to think clearly, for me to be able to experience my emotions, for me to be able to start dreaming again about having my feet on the wet grass in the morning and just breathing, being human, experiencing. And it made all the difference. So, yes, I think take some time, find yourself someone that you can walk with, and use that to then reset, find a goal that's not that exacting, but feels like it's fun, and combine fun and work as far as you can.
I absolutely love that. Thank you very much for the advice. And I hope that I'm not the only one here. I'm talking to all my listeners now, right? I hope I'm not the only one who was thinking about being in a hammock with your advisor next to you and a quick pina colada. It can be non-alcoholic, it's fine.
Love it.
And just getting some of the great advice and just working on my mental state. So thank you, Lynn, for being an absolute gem on our podcast, and thank you to all of our listeners. And as I always say to end the show, dream, build, play. Let's design a happy and productive workplace playground together.